Welcome to Monologues by Hassie, where I'm going to be dropping unsolicited brain dumps from the depths of my grey matter. I'll talk about life, money, society, and self-development, plus whatever else lies up there, whilst hopefully not getting cancelled in the process. Over the past few months, I've been very much traveling by myself, and that means when I find myself in a new location, I don't have the typical networks of friends and colleagues that I've had back in Sydney, where I've grown up. And so one of the things that I've found incredibly helpful is actually speaking to people in third places. And what are third places? They're places where, like coffee shops, co-working spaces, the lunchroom at your office. And so where I lived, a great example was where I was living in Malaysia. I was living in a building that had mixed uses. So there were university students, there were companies who were renting office space, there were other travelers like me who were simply passing through and needed a place to rent. So it was a very interesting place to be living. And I found the most helpful thing I did in hindsight was, especially in the early days when I was brand new and I didn't yet find the office that I rented down the track, was going and speaking to people in the lunchroom. So when I was working in my room and I'd come out to go make lunch and make a cup of tea, if I saw somebody there, I would introduce myself and say hi. And if you're a more introverted person, this can feel very unnatural, but I highly recommend doing this because 95% of the time, nothing is really going to happen, and you have to respect that not everybody is in the mood to have a conversation, and maybe they've got their own things. But I still think it is worth actually putting a hello and introduction out there and making yourself known, because if you're going to be somewhere, especially like me, when I was living there for 3 months, it makes sense to introduce yourself to the people that you are potentially going to be seeing very often on a highly frequent basis, sometimes even day to day. And one of the biggest benefits that I had was actually somebody I spoke to who was a UI UX designer. And I remember we were just talking and this person, she asked me what I was doing here, and I explained that, I quit my job so I can do the things that people don't pay me to do. And I was learning the parts of software engineering that I was uncomfortable with. And I said, I really respect the fact that you're a UI UX designer because it's something that, I'm currently really struggling with, I really suck at, and I respect people who can make these elegant designs that other people want to use. And, that kind of sparked off a connection. We connected on LinkedIn, and voila, when I finally got around to releasing my app and when I created a landing page, this person, she very kindly offered to roast my landing page over lunch. So we did that. And it was such an incredible eye-opening experience because it allowed me to realize where I was going wrong, what I could improve, and it really trained my brain to ask a different set of questions that I was asking as somebody who was very much stuck in the code. And so it was very handy to have formed that connection. And I was able to introduce this person to other people there. So there are network effects. I feel like you always need to give back when you meet people. And this is one of those things where if I had not had introduced myself in the lunchroom, I would be far poorer for it. And I don't mean in a monetary sense, I mean in terms of skills and experience. Because one thing that happens when you get to speak to people who are either on your track or they're in a complementary track, especially in the professional world, is that you will learn things, you will get advice that is going to allow you to stand on their shoulders. So they are going to provide you some shortcuts. She actually gave me a list of books to read and some materials, and it was all very helpful. It basically did the discovery process for me to kind of learn 1 to 2% of the UI UX skill set, which combined with what I already have is now very valuable because there are multiplicative effects. So being willing to go out there and speak to a stranger in a third place is a very important thing. And I think back to times where I was in big companies, big offices, and there were people you'd see all the time. And I realized that back then, I definitely could have been a bit more open and said hello and introduced myself. Because there's a lot of value in being that person who is the connector, is the one who does the introductions. Now, outside of a professional setting, I've been in more of a pure holiday, almost, mode in Cambodia. And you're here for a much shorter space of time. So if you need to meet people and you need people to go hiking with and go on a trip with, then especially as a solo traveler, you need to be willing to say hello, what are your names, run the introductions. And I think that's a very valuable thing because you actually create a better experience for everybody there. And so I went on a boat trip and it was 12 people, almost strangers, because some of them were couples, some of them were friends traveling. And I was just by myself and we did the introductions. And at the end of the 5 hours, we all had such a great time on that boat, going snorkeling, going fishing, dancing to music, watching the sunset. And it was an incredible thing. And I realized that had I been quiet in that moment, everyone would have been poorer for it. So I have learnt through experience that being in third places and speaking to people and getting out there is an incredibly valuable thing. And it makes your experience going through life much more valuable. We are humans, we are social creatures. And so be it in a professional setting or be it in a casual setting, it is very useful to be the person who is introducing themselves first and who is also doing the introductions for other people, helping other people connect, helping other people make those connections, because it will have a compounding effect. Even if only for a short time, it makes everything more pleasant, and I'm grateful that I'm doing it. And that is not to say that you're always going to be in the mood for this. You need to respect the fact that other people aren't going to be in the mood for this and that it's not always going to be the correct time. But people have approached me before and I just haven't been in the mood. Maybe I've been recovering from a sickness. Maybe I've had too much work on my plate. And that is normal. That is going to happen to you when you start being more open. But if this does happen to you, the last thing you want to do is cringe and say, oh, that didn't work out very well and never do it again. But you say it's okay. This person just was not receptive to my energy. Maybe they did not have the energy to sustain this at that time. It is completely fine. What I've found is over time, you become better at doing this. You become better at identifying the hidden signs of whether somebody is open to communicating in a third place. And it is something that you simply need to hone. Because, as I've mentioned, this has been incredible for me professionally. There are skills that I'm so grateful that I've learned and ways of thinking that I previously did not have, that I would not have gained had I not had the courage to go speak to a stranger in a lunchroom. And so my prompt to all of you listening to this is, what third places do you frequent in your day-to-day where you could actually go out and introduce yourself to people? Do you work in a company, or do you work in a large company where you have a very big office and there's people from other departments that you don't necessarily interact with that you could be interacting with? Because imagine the opportunities that creates. And maybe it's the case that you're the person actually giving the advice and sharing the experiences with other people, which actually has a very positive impact for you too, because it is a dividend of your memories. You literally get to share your memories and relive good things and maybe help somebody else avoid some of the troubles that you've faced, which this might sound selfish, but even though you're helping somebody else, you're actually helping yourself first. Because the reason that people are happy to, and when I say happy, when people genuinely give advice or a recommendation, especially when I meet people traveling and they say, when you go to Vietnam, you should try this. Whilst they are giving me advice and they are making my life easier, I can see the joy it brings them to be talking about those things. Because they get to relive that experience, that amazing experience that they had when they were biking around Vietnam. And so the benefits go both ways. So yeah, my prompt is go speak to somebody in a third place. If you're in an office, could be the person from another department that you see all the time and you have a glance every now and then, but you've never spoken to. You might be in a co-working space and there are just other people around and you never know what you could learn from them and what they could learn from you. So get out there and take advantage of your third places. And so with this, I will end this episode here, and I wish all of you listening to this great success on all your endeavors. You've just made it through another episode of Monologues by Hassie. It brings me great pleasure to know that you made it to the end. To listen to more episodes, subscribe on your favorite podcast app or visit monologuesbyhassie.com. Thanks for swinging by.